Welcome once again to the Ahern video podcast. Today I want to focus on successor planning part 2. Last week we talked about picking an heir to the throne, picking a leader. Even if you have multiple children involved in the business, one individual has to make the final decision when the decisions are tough. It's very difficult to make that decision because as a parent, if you love all of your children, you want to make sure that you don't offend any of those children. But as a business person, as a person that's looking at your business as a portion of your major retirement, you have to do what's not only best for the husband and wife, but you also have to do what's best for your employees and what's best for the community. And if you plan on passing the business on, first thing you need to do is you need to choose who the leader is. And I went through all the steps of what you have to look for. Additionally, if you decide to go through that process, then you need to know what the actual value of the business is, and you need to go to an outside third party that's had a substantial amount of transportation experience to value the business. Don't go to a traditional CPA or a law firm. Not that they're not very good, but you need to know what the industry's willing to pay for your business at any specific time. So get someone that's been involved in a lot of transactions. Get someone that understands what private companies pay for private companies. Once you get the value established, then you have to determine how you're going to get some liquidity out of the business. There's multiple ways to get liquidity out of the business. When we're involved in a successor plan, we actually sit down with the founders, and then we sit down with the siblings, or in some cases the employees, and we explain to them that the business is worth this. There's a certain amount of liquidity that's going to have to pass to the owners at the time of closing. The balances has to be secured to a certain extent. Recently I was involved in a successor plan, and there were 3 children involved, and so we set a price, and the children said, okay, well, we're going to pay mom and dad so much a month. Well, how are you going to secure it? Well, there's nothing to secure. We're just going to pay them out of the operations of the company. Well, what happens if you don't make it? Well, that's not going to happen. Well, what happens if you don't make it? And there's dead silence. And I said, so here's what we'd like to do. I understand that one of you has your house clear and free. We'd like to take a second lien and position on that house. The first response was, that's not going to happen. Why is that not going to happen? Well, because it's my house. And the mother and father looked over at the individual that made the comment and said, let me understand this. We're going to give you a $25 million business, and your house is worth X amount of dollars, and you don't want to pledge that as some type of security to have some risk in the business? Yes. Got a better idea. You're an employee now. Very emotional process. But what the founders were able to do is see what the real issue was. And this isn't in all instances, but many children simply believe they're entitled. They're entitled because their name is Jones, Smith, Ahern, or whatever, that if they step into the position in the company and they work in the company, then of course they should automatically be given the company. Now there's a flip of that. Sometimes the children are directly responsible for the success of the business. And if there's multiple children involved in the business, even though one person may be directly responsible for the financial success of that business, that person isn't compensated stock-wise or bonus-wise any differently than anybody else. And that's not fair. If you have one of your children that's in dispatch, another one that's a chief financial officer, and another one that's a president, come on. Granted, you need to dispatch trucks, but should they all be compensated the same? Absolutely not. Should they all receive the same type of compensation package based on performance? Absolutely not. Could they all receive the same amount of stock? Possibly. But if you have someone that's directly responsible for the performance of the company, you have someone that's going to make the tough decisions, you have someone that's going to put in the extra hours, why should all the other children that don't participate at that same level or don't participate in the business at all be compensated the same? And the answer is they shouldn't. And the point I'm trying to make, you should see all the steps that you have to take. You see how difficult it is. You see how emotional it is. You decide to leave the business, you need to do it in steps. As you start the process of doing it in steps, remember that the more steps you take, you cannot take the business back. So you have to check and double check to make sure that at the end of the day you've made the right decision. In closing, the best advice I can give any and all of you is that I think it's every parent's dream to transfer their business to their children. I know it was mine. I am very close to all of my children. They're all adults now. We always get together for all the normal holidays. We get together during the weekends. We have barbecues and picnics and things of this sort. But the most difficult process I had to do was tell some of my children that as much as I love you, I would not have you responsible for my financial destiny. And that's what you have to do when you're transferring your business to your kids. Who's going to be the most responsible? Who's going to make sure that at the end of the day what you agreed to is going to happen? Who's going to make sure that as we continue to evolve in the trucking industry, they continue to think outside the box, and who's going to embrace change? If you do all those things and you get the right people to assist you in the process, you'll be able to transition the business. If you don't, and you leave everything to the kids equally, the chances of that company perpetuating itself after you've passed on is very remote. Until next time, thank you for attending the podcast.